Welcome to Transformational Leadership, the podcast for leaders building high-performance organizations and teams. In every episode, you will hear from executives and transformation experts who've led with vision, executed under pressure, and delivered real, scalable, and impactful results. You'll hear practical insights and leadership stories from executives who've driven change, delivering transformation, and consistently winning in highly complex environments. No fluff. Just frameworks, lessons, and stories from the front lines of leadership. If you're serious about building competitive impact through people, you're in the right place. Here is your host, Jeff Harnois.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Transformational Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Harnois. Our guest today, John Murphy, is formerly the head of marketing at JLL Technologies, a startup venture in a $20 billion commercial real estate firm. I'm certain the transformation stories there are going to be excellent. John is an expert in marketing leadership, focusing on demand generation, partner and product marketing, and strategic marketing, all funneling into high-performing go-to-market wins. Early in his career, John joined a startup software company right out of college to build a customer service function. So no experience, right into the deep end. Ended up winning the number one ranking in customer service. And if we have time today, we'll jump into that story a bit. We're going to explore two main transformation stories with John. The first will be JLL Technologies and that transformation. And the second will be at Akamai Technologies. And with that, everyone, please join me in welcoming John Murphy to the stage. John, nice to see you.
Jeff, it's great to see you, and thank you for that introduction. It's great to be here and to speak to you about transformation, which is not easy, right? And you know, I know you're an expert at it. But for me, you know, and I appreciate you talking a little bit about early on in my career. You know, some of the early success that I had, but you know, that was really my first time getting involved in something transformational. And it seems like either I've followed transformation throughout my career or it's drawn me in somehow. So I'm pleased to be here and happy to talk to you, and hopefully, you know, we can surface some good insights today.
Nice. Yeah, it's awesome for you to be here. You know, I want to talk about JLL Technologies and the transformations that went on there. But, you know, since you mentioned the customer service setup, a couple of things come up for me on that story right from the very beginning. The first is you're getting into an area where you don't have previous experience. You don't have any reference points. You don't even realize that you're in a transformation while it's happening.
And that's often the case.
You just know that you've got to get something built here. I'd love to hear how you were thinking about it at the time. And I realize this goes back a little bit, but you know, from the memory banks, how were you thinking about that opportunity when it was presented?
Well, I mean, you know, when it was presented, I mean, certainly, you know, to me, it felt like a big responsibility to build a customer service function of which I had no previous experience with. Really, though, for me, it was all about just doing whatever it took to make sure that the customers got what they needed out of the solution. So really, you know, at the end of the day, it was you just figured it out as you went, which is typical, you know, for startups. And you know, one of the things about me is I like to wear a lot of different hats. Do a lot of different things, and you just figure it out, you know, and your anchor is, I have a customer, they have a real problem with their business because of my software. I have to help them, and you just stay anchored on that, and you know, I think just helped me sort of get through it and learn as I went along.
Well, you must have done something right, because that function ended up winning an award in the category of customer service, which, you know, in the technology marketplace is pretty hard to do because it's very saturated. I'm assuming that you must have thought about this transformation through the customer lens. in thinking about priorities and standards. What was on your mind there in terms of your expected outcomes?
At first, the priority was just for me to really become an expert in the software so that I could help the customer, um, no matter the problem. I think that the challenge became, as our customer base grew, really the priority was scale, and it was building out a team and finding the people. Now I'm in a startup, so it's not like I had the resources to go, pay a premium to get top talent, but it was really to find the people that, had the right sort of positive, attitude and approach to do what it took, again, to serve the customer, and then also, willingness to learn, to deal with all the bumps along the way, and learn as we went along. So I think scale was, became important. And for me also, it was learning how to manage a team and work with different personalities and deal with, different challenges, empathize with different situations, and you start to recognize that not everything is going to be done the way I want it done, or the way I would do it, which is not necessarily the best way, but to sort of let people, approach problems their way, and tackle things their way. So I don't know if that answers the question. It was a while ago, but I hope that starts to answer the question a little bit.
Well, I think it probably, my sense, my instinct tells me that it was pretty foundational. And certainly you've got a lot of experiences between that and then ultimately JLL Technologies. Let's talk a little bit about JLL Technologies. Why don't you give us a tiny bit of background and then we'll jump into the transformation elements of that?
Well, okay, so JLL, for those that aren't familiar with JLL Technologies, as you mentioned at the beginning, startup technology venture within a $20 billion global corporate real estate company. And, imagine your $20 billion in revenue comes from corporate real estate. You wake up one day, COVID, you wake up one day and occupancy goes from 90% occupancy down to just about zero. So that's what, JLL faced, in conjunction with, I think, the corporate real estate industry overall was going through a little bit of commoditization, lack of differentiation among the leaders. And so JLL was faced with this sort of dilution of differentiation, but also this fundamental, probably once in a lifetime event that totally disrupted the industry. And so they decided, at an executive level, to become a technology company. And in large part, if they saw that technology was going to be the way for their customers to get through the changes that COVID placed on the corporate real estate industry, the remote work to hybrid work to and what that meant to physical space. And so they made a decision to form a new identity, which was to become a technology company. And so I was asked by a woman who I worked with at Akamai for 5 years, and she became the CMO, if you will, of this technology venture. And she brought me in to help her stand up a marketing function to support the JLL technology, this venture. Suzanne Johnson was her name. Wonderful woman, great leader. That she is certainly someone who I've learned so much from throughout my career.
Yeah, nice shout out to Suzanne. It's really interesting to me, thinking about the problem, COVID in general and commercial real estate. Naturally, we wouldn't think that a technology solution would be a primary go-to for commercial real estate, like banking technology. They're far from the leading edge of technology. So it's interesting that that became, what they were looking for to solve the problem. But tell me a little bit more about, starting up in that role of leading the marketing efforts for this particular in-house startup?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, within commercial real estate, even prior to COVID, the industry definitely lagged behind in terms of embracing technology. So, sort of a double whammy in terms of the need to become more technologically advanced, but then also with COVID, really that was the way forward. Um, again, to deal with all the change that took place in that industry. So for me, if I think about JLL, I break it up into three acts, and we'll talk about sort of the first act, which was coming into this newly formed venture, and there were some pieces in the venture in place in terms of go-to-market, sales, product marketing, and some marketing resources. So for me, it was to come in and really to sort of get a sense for capabilities, what was in place already, and then understand what we needed to do to build this foundation. And coming in, recognized early on that there really wasn't much of a go-to-market foundation, very tactical and activity based. Um, you know, very early on realized that there wasn't a lot of alignment between sales and marketing, and we can come back around and maybe talk about that a little bit. And so early on, it was just to understand the current situation, and then start to prioritize some of the foundational things that needed to happen, such as marketing, sales alignment, that really needed to happen in order to start to build out this marketing function for JLL Technologies.
Okay. So, what I think you said is what I would consider one of the critical parts of transformation, which is the assessment, understanding two things. What is your current state? What does that look like? What is your desired state? And then that sort of, you can work backwards to figure out what the transformation, plan and scale looks like. When you got through your assessment and you realized that there were, some foundational things that needed to be put in place, like alignment with sales. What about the bigger strategy? How did you think about, solving the go-to-market problem, in that environment?
Well, I mean, it was we talked about the first phase was really just to sort of diagnose reality and understand reality, and then what needed to happen. And um, we had some good some good people, good resources, good expertise within marketing, but very tactical, very activity based. And so for me, really the core was we needed a plan before we start to build this function out. We needed a plan, and that plan really needed to align with sales. And when I say align with sales, I mean, it, I think on the surface, we might think as marketing leaders, it's just understanding what sales' goals are in terms of revenue and bookings, and then signing up for a portion of that. But what I learned in my career, is alignment takes a lot of discovery and really understanding and peeling back the layers of those goals, all to try and understand what can marketing impact, what aspects of those goals. And by goals, I mean, it's, net new bookings, retention, upsell, cross-sell. It could be a number of, other goals, but then understanding what can marketing truly impact. And so that was something that it didn't exist. And so really, what's key for any marketing leader and is to establish trust with sales. And in order to do that, it has to start with alignment and the ability to make some promises aligned to sales that sales agrees with, and then to deliver on those promises, but to do it in a transparent way.
Once that alignment was in place, once you had the plan in place, then I'm assuming it was a transition into implementation. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, it was a little bit of like fly the plane and build it at the same time, right? I mean, it's not like right. And I think that's typical of probably of most transformations. Is it's not like you come in and there's no short-term goals. There typically are short-term goals that need to be achieved while you're building a foundation that can achieve the longer-term goals in a repeatable, scalable fashion. And so, yeah, initially, um, making sure that we understood the what marketing could accomplish in alignment with sales and sales' goals, and really at the end of the day, that was signing up for a portion of bookings, but then also understanding where that booking would come from in terms of products. JLLT had both SaaS products and services, so getting a sense now for the composition of those goals, the marketing goals in terms across products, geographies, and then putting in place a plan to align to the ICPs. So making sure we're all aligned on target persona, the types of companies and verticals and industries that we want to go after, and then fleshing out a plan to start that journey, knowing that the foundation still needs to be created. And so one of the things we had to do early on was just build some simple dashboards so we could start to track things like lead and pipeline velocity, lead conversion and pipeline velocity, and those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's interesting to me, this idea of having a dashboard, but in the context of, your analogy of flying the plane while building the plane, I often think about that as, changing a flat tire on a moving car, which by the way is possible. It's just not easy, right? It's just not easy. And it requires some planning and some special engineering and all of that. But um, and so I think transformation can be iterative from that perspective. But what that boils down to, from my perspective, is this: transformation requires a resiliency, which is your ability to, address the unknown, and then an adaptability to be able to pivot to, market demands or operational demands to make it successful. What sort of things were coming up along the way that weren't expected or weren't planned that you had to address and solve for?
So yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right. I mean, I think it is very much. I think it's an iterative process. Transformation it's messy. Some things work, a lot of things don't work. I think, my goodness, I mean, some of the things that came up, you know, we we set some goals. If I think about that first year, we set some goals based on an understanding and evaluation of the sales goals, and working through that whole process to align. But I think not having data to reinforce those decisions, we had to make some best guess estimates at what we thought we could accomplish with very little data. And so while we actually, in the first year, we exceeded, I think the number was 20 million in pipeline, wasn't quite what we had signed up for in that first year. And really that's because the foundation was still being built, right? So I think, after year one, it was acknowledging that there were certain things like, for instance, BDR capacity and sending too many leads to the BDR function to nurture those leads, not having not having lead scoring in place to start to manage lead flow, things like lead nurturing. As leads, top of funnel comes in, most of those leads require multiple touches before they convert, and not having some of those pieces in place really, I think, impacted our ability to meet our goals. But at the same time, we demonstrated we got from 0 to 20 million in the first year in pipeline, demonstrated to the business, that we could build this demand engine, and we earned the trust of sales, enough to warrant a second year of scaling the business.
Nice. That's a magnificent outcome, and I love the framing here around, you know, doing what you say you're going to do, building a foundation of trust, and maybe even confidence at that point in your ability to build this business, build this function, and have it perform at the levels that it needed to for the executive decision makers to say we want to reinvest in this again. That's fantastic.
I think that first phase was all about earning the right to grow.
Love that.
Yeah, I think that's really what we had to do. Did we do our, did we deliver what the business needed, overall? No, we fell short, but we earned the right to grow.
They saw the potential.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's magnificent. What sort of issues came up that you weren't expecting, other than the ones we've talked about? What sort of big things came up? Anything on the customer side that came up that was unexpected that you had to, have resiliency and the nimbleness to pivot to?
I think a couple things. I think first of all, it was the mandate to grow the business by 20 to 30%, in that sort of the second phase or the second year, was the need to grow the business 20 to 30%. And that was going to come not through additional budget, but that was going to come through a flat budget and finding ways to be more efficient. And again, at the same time, still building a scalable, predictable demand engine, right? And so some of the, if I reflect back, some of the challenges were, things like just ICP discipline and not necessarily generating the leads in the right accounts, right personas, that would move through the pipeline the way we needed it to.
I love that framing around ICP discipline. I know, especially in earlier stage companies, that's really, really hard for them to sort of master, and yet it's mission critical for them to master it.
I think it's amazing, like we just and that it's so fundamental, but I'd say, in every situation I've been in, every go to market, every strategy, it's for sure we have ICPs, but the question is, do we know how those ICPs are doing? Do we have dashboards and metrics that allow us to go back and evaluate the ICPs? And I say that because, something that I've learned is if you get that ICP right and you really optimize that ICP, that has compound effects on everything else. Sales velocity, deal size, competitiveness, right? And so I think tying, really coming back around and mapping performance to ICP is a big step in the iterative process we talked about with respect to transformation.
This is such a deep and rich focal point for me. We're integrating the iteration process. So we're engaging, we're defining, we're taking a step. You said something earlier that really resonated with me. We're making decisions with incomplete information, which, for some folks, that becomes a paralysis for them. It stops them in moving forward. And yet, it's rare for us to have complete information. And so you have to be decisive, and then you have to take those steps. And it's sort of in parallel to that theme of failing fast. But, the other way of thinking about it is learning fast in this particular case so that you can further define the ICP, because there, to your point, so much downstream of that happens well when we get that right.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Yep, and you're right. You have to be decisive. You have to be able to make decisions with imperfect information, but be able to evaluate those decisions quickly. one of the ways I lead is I like to innovate, which means I'm okay with failure to a certain extent. Like I'm okay with failure. Like in fact, I always want to carve out some of my budget to experiment and some of my resources to experiment. To fail, and we know that most of that's going to fail, but we also hope that we can come up with one or two innovations that again, allow us to significantly improve marketing efficiency.
You use the word fail here. I'm smiling about it a little bit because I have somewhat of a different, maybe even, definition of failure. For me, the traditional version is we did something and it didn't work, and we're going to call that a failure. For my definition of failure is you didn't try, you didn't take a swing at it. That's a failure. My second definition of failure is you did something and it didn't work out and you didn't learn anything from it. And then you didn't try again. That's what failure looks like to me. And maybe I'm biased or a little tilted towards the innovation side to your point. Innovation requires that experimentation. And I think when we're talking about marketing, if we're not experimenting, we are definitely failing.
Yeah, I well said. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Well, what were some of the other, big transformation elements around JLL Technologies?
Yeah, I mean, so I think, that sort of that second phase was all about efficiency, and there it was, tightening up alignment to the ICP, introducing account-based marketing, so a more disciplined approach focused on specific accounts, and this is account-based marketing at scale, leveraging some interesting, tools that allowed us to identify those accounts and that addressable market, identifying companies that had a higher propensity to buy. So things like intent tools, and there are a lot of different technologies that give you those insights, the sort of the buy behavior insights. And then I think the other piece, the other fundamental piece, well, a couple of others, but certainly one was acknowledging that we had really two fundamentally different portfolios: a SaaS portfolio and a services portfolio. And that services portfolio, very different sales cycle and engagement. And so we had to take a step back because we were underperforming on the services side more than, on the SaaS side, we're actually doing a pretty good job, but on the services side, underperforming. So we had to look at the go-to-market, look at the offerings, the way we message, the way we package, the way we went to market, and also the way we engage with the customer, and come up with a new sales motion to support the services side of the business. I think the other element was continuing to build that foundation, which meant introducing lead scoring, which meant introducing lead nurturing to capitalize on the top of funnel that didn't convert, but continue to engage with those customers in a value added way, so that at some point you can bring some of that back into progress that down the funnel, I'll say. So those are some of the key things, and really, if I think about that second phase, we exceeded our targets. So we had tangible targets, we exceeded them. We also, again, demonstrated to JLL's executives that we can build this business and scale this business. And so we demonstrated that efficiency could become the growth lever, for the JLLT demand engine.
Yeah. And it sounds to me, well, first of all, just for people who may not know the differences between, product marketing and services marketing is completely different. One, maybe not completely different, but significantly different. Is that right?
Yes, it's just it is more. I'll say this: it's in my experience, it's more abstract. Selling services is a little bit more abstract, and there's a need for expertise higher up in the funnel, I would say, than on the SaaS side. And so one of the changes we had to make was to insert experts higher up in the funnel earlier on in the engagement with prospects than you typically would, on the SaaS side. So very different. Not as so. One of the things we also did is with products you can bring to life. Very easy to bring to life. You can show products, demonstrate products. Services, again, more abstract. So what did we do? We brought to life the people behind the services and the expertise is we brought that to life as part of our strategy, part of our engagement, part of our marketing strategy.
And it worked.
Yeah, I mean, it did. Again, it helped us exceed our numbers overall, and for sure, helped us start to break through on the services side as we were on the SaaS side.
Okay, nice. Excellent. And then I think you mentioned there was a third element.
Well, I mean, the third element was to make this transformation, make the transformation disappear. And by that, I mean, JLL, at that point, JLL had been recognized as a real estate technology leader, had achieved some high rankings from key analysts in the corporate real estate technology business. So JLL had established itself as a technology brand. JLL's customers on the real estate side were starting to ask about the technology, pieces of the business. So I'd say victory there with respect to, establishing JLL as a technology brand, demonstrating growth of the technology business. But we were still a separate standalone business from JLL, and to achieve that true global scale, the next phase was all about taking the technology, the standalone technology business, and bringing it back over to the core JLL business and integrating it in. So that meant enabling the corporate real estate sellers, enabling the real estate marketing organization to be able to incorporate technology into their stories, into their campaigns, into their engagement, to achieve the scale that ultimately has allowed JLL to they've climbed the Fortune 500 list. I mean, they've gone from like 350 to 150, so they've climbed that list. Yep. Yeah, if you look at the share price when we started, it was, I want to say it was under 100. It topped 300, and what was rewarding is the CEO in part in a shareholder call acknowledged the importance of technology in helping JLL achieve that and provide that shareholder value.
Nice. I love that. That is phenomenal. This is such an interesting, in my mind, transformation story, John. An organization started with an idea, and the idea was to start up a technology arm, um, not completely independent, but basically its own, maybe subsidiary might be the right word here, to solve a major, at this point, global problem that was happening that was affecting their business. And so that's where it began, all the way to then being fully integrated into the operation of the parent company. What a great story, and you must feel good about all of those transformations.
Yeah, I feel great about it, but it was like, you see, my background is Mount Everest. I think, I mean, you'll appreciate it. I mean, transformation is not easy, right? It was very rewarding. It was hard, right? It's hard to do. And, I think, at JLT, transformation is more than new technology. It's more than a strategy or vision. And, it's about changing the behavior of not just one person, which is hard enough, but tens of thousands of people, you know, in my opinion, and it's changing that behavior on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's what transformation truly takes.
Yeah, boy, that's really, really well said, John. Exactly right. We can look at all the categories of transformation when we're talking about it at the organizational level: technology, operations, transformations for customers, maybe transformation around product and strategy, marketing. All of those things can be transformation, but they always come down to the people. One of my opinions about this is you can have the best transformation plan, you can have the best tactics planned out, you can have all the right motivations for doing transformation. But if you don't have the right people and then the right alignment to support those people, the chances that your transformation is going to be effective is really low. And it sounds like you brought all those pieces together.
Yeah, we did, and again, I couldn't agree more that execution is such an important part uh, of transformation, and it's execution in a new and maybe uncomfortable way.
Change is always uncomfortable for most people. Nice. Well, let's talk about Akamai a little bit. What was happening at Akamai?
Oh goodness, so Akamai, wonderful company. It's my goodness, it's a 30-year-old internet company. Akamai, to a certain extent, is one of the companies that helped invent the internet as a sort of the network that we all that's so important to our lives today. But at the time when I joined Akamai, they were known for their business was content delivery over the internet, and there were lots of problems with reliable, fast content delivery over the internet that Akamai was able to solve with its technology, with its cloud-based technology. And it had grown in about a 10-year period to about roughly $1 billion business. And when I joined, really they had, I'd say, saturated their core CDN business, which focused on media, entertainment, and gaming, and a few other industries. And so growth was starting to slow down. Competitors were in the market, so margins were starting to decline. So the company had to drive growth in other ways. And so they brought me in to help them. The opportunity was to help them grow in emerging industries, so a new set of industries, but then also to go beyond CDN, and to security was just starting to become a problem with companies that relied on doing business over the internet, or engaging with customers over the internet. And so, Akamai had a solution there, but when I joined, it was a small operation within the company, and so I was brought in to help drive growth in these emerging industries, which was, again, one of those things where I didn't really know it was transformation when I joined the company. Looking back, it's like, oh, I see what we accomplished. And it certainly was a transformation that enabled Akamai to become the $4 to $5 billion company that it is today.
Yeah, let's do that. I'd love to know a bit more. First of all, congratulations on, your contribution to the success of the organization. And it is, a solid organization today, still delivering in the market. What were some of the biggest, problems or transformation opportunities that you were dealing with?
So coming in initially, of course, it's to learn, right? It's to listen and learn and diagnose and understand the business. And so coming in, the company had a strategy in the emerging industries, but it wasn't growing as quick as we needed it to. And so one of the first one of the first actions, strategic actions for me, was to diagnose the go to market. working with sales and other cross-functional leaders. And we uncovered a few things there that told us that the go-to-market needed to change. Just very briefly, I'll touch on a couple of the challenges, one of which was that we were selling into around very specific use cases around web performance, so not even positioning security. So selling a slice of Akamai's value, and then selling into lines of businesses around very specific use cases. And what that meant, from a sales perspective and from a growth perspective, is not growing as quickly as we needed to, because the deals weren't as large as they should have been with some of these large enterprises that we're selling into and the value that Akamai could deliver. So the deal sizes weren't big enough, and sales was not able to upsell or cross-sell effectively outside of the line of business that they had the relationship in. They just weren't able to get outside of that line of business. So, and then the third piece was just having having the right, I'll say, the right tribal knowledge around key use cases for Akamai in these emerging industries, and the challenge there was typical in enterprise sales organizations: turnover of your sellers, and so we had a lot of new sellers come in and not fully understand Akamai's value propositions within these emerging industries. So those are the things that we had to tackle. And what it led to after doing some research is we found a new buyer. So we found a new buyer that we felt like would allow Akamai to get higher up in the organization and be able to get a broader perspective of initiatives taking place within the organization across lines of businesses that would allow us just to be able to, in essence, provide more value to the customers and therefore capture more value from each customer. And so finding that new buyer, it was the enterprise architect. We then had to overhaul the messaging, the sales strategy, and the marketing campaign. But it allowed us to break through, and it allowed us to sell at a platform level across enterprises. And so deal sizes went from $75K on average to $150K, and we were able to accelerate growth of not just the performance side of the business, but the security side of the business, where we went, during a course of a 2-3 year period, from 50 million in revenue on the security side to 350 million in revenue, to now security is a bigger business for Akamai than web performance.
Super interesting to me how the organization went through its own transformation while you were operating the transformations in the marketing world. I wonder if they knew that their business was going to flip and start emphasizing on security. I wonder if they not maybe knew is the wrong word. I wonder if they anticipated that, or if they were just opportunistic when those opportunities presented. What do you think?
Yeah, here's what I'll say. I think luck is always part of the equation. I believe in terms of success, there always has to be a little bit of luck, and so I think there was some element of it being an opportunistic opportunity. But I think by the time I joined, I think Akamai realized, because of the uniqueness of its position in the market on the content delivery side, Akamai was responsible for delivering 30% of the world's internet traffic. Having that visibility allowed the company to be very strategic in terms of making sure that traffic was also secure and not attacked in any way. And so I think by the time I joined, I think the company had recognized the importance of really growing security. I think it was important for the company to establish itself as a security company and to really accelerate the growth because of the competitiveness of that business and the formidable competitors that in companies that are in that space. But yeah, it was quite a journey to go through with Akamai, and certainly for me it was the transformation here was all about changing the buyer and looking at the motion totally differently. And that's what allowed us to break through the growth ceiling that Akamai had faced. Jeff, if I may, just the other element was scaling the business, and Akamai wasn't able to or needed to scale it globally at a more rapid pace than the direct sales channel would afford, and so that required enabling and unlocking and unleashing the channel, and so another element of transformation at Akamai was to go, for me was to go in and to completely overhaul the partner marketing function, which was really very much an activity based function, and to really turn that into a strategic function aligned to Akamai's go to market, and really prioritizing the partner marketing services that we provided to customers or to partners around alignment to Akamai's go to market, and so really proud of the work that we were able to do in the partner marketing function to scale contribution from the channel.
Nice. Well, John, these are excellent transformation stories, before, during, and after, and looking at high impact transformations in a couple of really big brands. It's an excellent experience and great content. Thank you for sharing all of that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. It's been it's a lot of fun. Transformation I love it. It's I'm someone who likes to take on big problems and tackle big problems, and that's transformation.
I think that's the promise of transformation, right? It's the idea that we can have our current state, we can envision where we want to go, and then, to your point, it's almost never easy, but it's always worth it when we put the effort in and we approach it in the right ways, and we have the right strategies and the right alignment and ultimately the right execution. Um, from a legacy standpoint, being able to leave major successful transformations that change the trajectory of organizations, there's just nothing like it. Yeah. Well, let me ask you a couple of questions I ask all of my guests. And again, feel free to have some fun with this, if you'd like to. What was the best piece of advice you received and didn't take?
Oh goodness, that's a good question. I'll say this for me. I like to lead by example, and I think at a certain point in my career, my manager really emphasized the importance of communication and of having to basically of promoting your accomplishments, and but doing it in a sort of a value based way. But so for me, I think it took me a while to come around to realize that while I like to lead by example, I like to lead by the accomplishments that that myself and my team that we deliver. I think it's important to educate an organization around those accomplishments, but do it in a way that you're not just beating your chest. You're delivering some value around maybe like a set of integrated marketing and sales tactics that worked and closed some big business, and let's go make this repeatable.
So what's the advice that you were given that you didn't take?
Oh, it was that it was to, to start to proactively communicate to the go-to-market organization around your accomplishments, to do it in a proactive way, as opposed to, again, it was like, I was, I like to allow my accomplishments to, to convey. Yeah, but there's so much, once if you can, I totally embrace now that the notion of, proactively communicating accomplishments, but again, it's in a value-based way, because really at the end of the day, it's really wanting to find success and rinse repeat that success in a scalable way.
That's excellent. Now, what if someone were coming into marketing, they were choosing marketing as a career, maybe entry level or, maybe early career in marketing. What piece of advice would you give them? If you could only give one piece of advice that would help them be successful, what would that be?
We talked a lot about it, on this call, is, it's alignment with sales. And there's a lot to that. Again, there's a lot to alignment with sales, but, um, as a marketer, everything you do it needs to be in partnership with sales, because you want sales engaged. You need sales engaged in the investments that you make, in the programs that you run, in the outcome of those programs. You want sales to have a stake in those. And so, I think it's so important to align and almost integrate, make sure you're integrated with sales. And then when we talk about alignment, again, I'll encourage marketers to dig in and really learn and understand sales goals and the composition of sales goals, to ensure that you're aligning to what you can actually, impact.
Yeah, I love that advice. And if um, if I were to think about it, I would say, if I were to add to what you've said, I would say go on sales calls on a regular basis. Go see how what you're creating from a marketing standpoint is being used, being leveraged, how customers are reacting to it. Go get that experience, because you will be a much better marketer when you understand how it's used in the field.
Yeah, I think that's another piece of advice, is it's but there is, some element of alignment there, but totally, I mean, you know, incredibly important, and to understand the customer and the value that your solutions bring to the customer. And for me, having a product marketing, background, as well as a revenue marketing background, I very much, appreciate that. And I don't, I think it's hard for, if you're a marketer on the revenue demand gen side, it's sometimes hard, to get that exposure to customers. I think there are ways to do it, and certainly like events, where you can start to engage. And while you may not truly appreciate or see the value of your solution, I think it'll help build that knowledge and that understanding of what your solutions and the value your solutions bring to your customers. Because at the end of the day, like, as a marketer, you want to believe, actually, as a person, we want to believe in what we do, and that there's some value, in the work that we do. And that value is to help customers, and help companies and help organizations achieve amazing things. And in part, that's because of, some of the different solutions that you provide to them.
And then my final question is, what advice would you give to your peer group? And I use the word advice, but maybe it's more wisdom, after your years of experience. What's one thing that you've learned, or one thing that you always do or think about or strategize around, that has contributed to your success that you'd want to share with others?
Well, I will say I've been blessed to have worked with some great leaders that have you know given me the coaching and the guardrails that I need, but at the same time, and have empowered me to really formulate my own strategies, to really inject my own ideas, innovate in my own ways to achieve the outcomes that we need to achieve. And so I think as a leader, like, I try and pay it forward. I want to pay it forward to my teams, and help them grow. And I think for me, in my experience, that's providing the different stakeholders on my team a true understanding of how their role and their function aligns to the business, giving them some guardrails, but letting them sort of pave their way, and being there for them when they run into the roadblocks and hurdles, and the successes, being there for them, and when they have success, and so I think just paying it forward is sort of that would be my advice to my peers.
Nice. Love that. Well, John, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, your stories were awesome, rich, major transformations with major impact. Excellent for our audience. I appreciate you and can't wait to see what you do next.
Jeff, it's been great. I very much appreciate spending some time with you to talk about this, and I hope some of it was of value to other folks as they're on their transformation journey. And very much looking forward to continuing to help companies transform to drive growth and achieve amazing things.
Awesome. Thank you for that. If you want people to be able to get in touch with you, what would be a good way for that?
I think LinkedIn is perfectly fine. I think LinkedIn is perfectly fine. And my contact information is there. So I think that's a great way to engage. And I'd love to connect.
Awesome. Thank you, John. All right. Have a great day, and I will see you again soon.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
The Transformational Leadership Podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes vision, action, diagnostics, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, be sure to let us know in the comments. We'd love you to join the conversation and help us transform the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are transforming organizations, leaders, and teams. In the meantime, be sure to like, subscribe, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.